Guys, back with the FITAID Morning Show with my co-host Aaron Hinde, the creator and mind behind FITAID, and the legendary triathlete and also the best coach in CrossFit and the world in endurance training and aerobic capacity, Mr. Chris Hinshaw.
Thank you,
Chris,
man.
thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We've all been waiting for this. We've tried to get you for like 3 years now, so I'm glad you're finally here.
Thanks, man.
How much do you think is coaching? Because you're by far the best coach, and we could all say it. I know you don't want to admit it, but we all know, like anybody who's like, you start training with Chris and you get significantly better. You start training with Rich, you get significantly better. But how much of it is actually God-given talent, God-given abilities to perform at this level?
So there are a lot of very talented athletes that are out there in the community today. I mean, with tremendous just God-given ability. But the thing about it is that they have to want the win. They have to make that sacrifice. And in many of the cases when I run into athletes, they just have no interest in wanting to learn. And if you're not willing to learn, then what's a coach supposed to do? Because all I'm then doing is just pushing content their way. And I need them to want to build that knowledge, because once they do that, they then become a competitor. They become a threat. Without knowledge, I can't create any confidence in an athlete. And most elite athletes that are winners today are the ones that are chasing knowledge.
So they have to have brains, not just brawn.
You really have to want it on all levels. You can't just sit there and say, I want to win the CrossFit Games. It's like, you know what? You've got to work hard, but you also have to be a student of the game. You have to really want to learn. Think about it. All the things that have come to you, right, your confidence, is because of experiences. Right. And that knowledge has created that. And if you think that you're going to compete against a Matt Fraser and not want to learn, good luck.
Well, my thing is what they're doing now. You know, this year CrossFit got flipped on its head, and now you had all these guys, especially the American guys who were all at the top. What's the landscape of the games going to look like? Because you had a lot of these great competitors all at the top. Now you're pulling from countries where the guys weren't that good anyway. Yeah. So is Fraser going to just dominate everything?
But I think so. Here's the thing. What CrossFit has done is similar to what a lot of name brands out there that have done in the past. Ironman Corporation was one of the originals, right? They had the Ironman in Hawaii, and it's an incredible brand. But how did they expand on the brand? Mm-hmm. What they did is they forced athletes to tour the world by creating competitions that you were required to do in order to compete at the Ironman in Hawaii. So they created ones in Germany, in Brazil, in Japan, in New Zealand, Canada, and they forced athletes to tour the world to develop those various regions. Mm-hmm. And what the nice thing is that now you've got Matt Fraser going over to Dubai. Look at the athletes that are going over to London. They are now going to be forced to travel the world. And when they do, the amount of awareness, the attention will be bigger. And before, you know what? Matt Fraser, truthfully, Rich Froning, where would they have done? They would have done their regional competition. They would have gone to the games. Yeah. And you know what? In Europe, no one would have seen them. And now they have to go.
Wow. I haven't heard it put like that at all, because what he was saying, Glassman was saying how he wants to expand the brand around the world, and I think that's a great idea.
It's about awareness. If you're going to create and expand the brand, you've got to expand the awareness. Mm-hmm. And if people don't see Rich Froning, good luck. No, it's not going to happen.
It'll be, you're a Ironman. I know you've done it for years.
Long time ago. So long ago it doesn't count. So let's change the subject.
What do you think the growth is? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years before it starts to hit that critical mass? Because when you do an Ironman, it's like $900 to enter, but everyone does it. I entered not thinking I was going to win, not thinking I was going to.
I think the lottery's open right now. Yeah, it's the $900 entry. Yeah,
and you could go and do it, and it's fun, and you're like competing against some of the best people in the world. But you do it just for the sake of saying, like, hey, I did it. I was there. It was a fun event. Where do you think CrossFit's going to be when it comes to that point? 5 years now? 10 years?
There's no doubt that we're in a transition.
Yeah.
But the thing that Glassman really is, what he's doing is he's trying to create global awareness of the sport. He's really trying to expand the brand. And He knows that he's making a huge sacrifice right now. I mean, the U.S. market, no doubt, is taking a hit. These elite level athletes, there's a male and a female that are going, unless you make it into one of the sanctional events or the top 20. That's it.
But isn't it primarily financially driven? I mean, everyone knows the growth in the U.S. is pretty much flat, but internationally it's going like gangbusters. There's one new affiliate per day opening in China, Brazil, Europe. I mean, Australia market, they're all on fire. They're like back in the good old days when we first got into this, 8-9 years ago. The growth was insane, and that's what they're experiencing internationally. So,
but don't you think that if you're going to create a global, not a U.S. sport, but a global sport, you have to do something to spark these other nations? You have to. And think about it. Here is the
Driving
guy,
your
the founder.
talent.
Right.
Yeah.
He's having to make a very difficult decision that will stall the sport for a period of time for the sake of creating global awareness.
Yeah. Well, you got to take 2 steps back to take a step forward.
Right, and so imagine that he's sitting there taking all of this hit, and all he's trying to do is expand global awareness so that it's on the same playing field as the U.S. I mean, here we have, let's say, 14,000 affiliates. With this change, could that go from 14,000 to 28,000?
Yeah, I was going to say
to
25,000.
56,000? Of course it can. Who out there in this entire community has released programming for free? Who's not charging? CrossFit. So part of it is the original foundation that Glassman created is not based upon the premise of, I'm going to make money. What I want to do is I want to create a methodology, and I want to prove that methodology is going to create fitness in the population that was ignored. What I mean by that is that, who gets all the attention today in the world? It's the elite endurance athlete, and it's the elite speed strength power athlete. What are we? We're average everyday people. We're not specialists, we're recreational, and he created a sport for that group, and he did it for free.
My biggest...
He did.
Yeah.
He did, and so people are complaining like the website, it has a bunch of 75-year-old women carrying milk jugs. Why shouldn't they be included in a community-based program? And he is creating awareness, and we may not like it, but that's what he's doing.
The awareness is good, but what about dealing with the primary objections that if you go out away from Wadapalooza, very skewed environment, down the street in Miami and say, hey, Joe Schmo off the street, what do you think of CrossFit? They're going to say, they're either going to be a CrossFitter and love it, or they're going to say, oh, I don't want to get too bulky, or I got to be in shape already to do CrossFit, or I'm going to get injured. Like, why is nobody dealing with the elephant in the room, which is the same objections that 90% of the population has about CrossFit, why they don't step into a gym? Because of those same objections.
Yeah, but I think that part of it is that's awareness. But CrossFit recognizes, and like you said, they get money from 2 sources, the affiliate fee and where else? You mentioned it, seminars, education. And so part of it is that CrossFit, in order to create a greater level of awareness and a greater level of training, they're trying to expand their educational piece. So people that become a level 1 or people that are an affiliate owner are going to go into these educational pieces where it's either online programming or in-person programming to create a broader depth to the market that CrossFit services, which is not the elites, not the specialists. These are the ones that are recreational. So CrossFit recognizes that they can make money by creating a variety of programs, educational pieces that the affiliate owner and the level 1, level 2 trainers can capture to correct these issues that are out in the public eye today. But what they have to do is they need what? Time, and they need participation for people dropping content in. The thing about it is this is a very new sport. It's evolution. I mean, what we're seeing from the elites with the Fronings, the Frasers, and Tias, these are the anomalies. We don't ever want to lose what our core was, which was the foundation that Glassman created.
Which is pretty amazing because you're dealing with those anomalies. I mean, those are your clients, right?
But that's where I sit there and I experiment on the anomalies, and what I find that works and creates adaptation in that most efficient and effective way, and I give that to the people that come to my seminar.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. What do you see the average Joe Schmo CrossFitter doing incorrectly? Like what piece of advice could we give, or you give, that's going to move the needle the most with people's training?
So we always focus and we look at it, constantly varied functional movement, high intensity, right? Well, here's the thing. In our training, we look at volume, right? That's one of the things we look at, and we look at intensity. But what about recovery? What about your recovery? It is. And one of the major measures of aerobic fitness is how fast can you recover? And so part of it is that I think that ultimately, if you are constantly hitting the hammer and just throttling, if you're working on your 1 rep strength, eventually, you know what's going to happen is, what is preventing you from doing more work, right? What we look at is work capacity, broad time modal domains. But eventually, like taking you and your push-ups, why is it that you can't do more push-ups? Is it because you're not strong enough? Eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to tell me that I just get tired. We need to fix the issue of fatigue. That becomes a limiting factor for people. I just get tired. If I can make you recover at a faster rate, then you know what you can do more of? Work. And we look at that in the community today. Like, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time with is firefighters. Do you know that firefighters, when they go in with their tank, that tank averages, on average, about 20 minutes. Do you know that most firefighters can't go back in with the second tank because they cannot recover from the, I mean, let's face it, it's a traumatic event when they're in there fighting the fire. Right, so if you look at firefighter and the capacity of fighting a fire, you know what you look at the fire and you're like, this is a fight where I have to have 40 people, 20-minute tanks, but this is a 60-tank fire. I am not having enough capacity. And you certainly don't want to risk somebody going in because they can't recover, because if you have a guy go down,
they're done.
It's 4 to 5 to take that guy out.
Back out, yeah.
So you gotta send a bunch of
That's
people.
real life. Yeah. And so for me, what I look at is, you know what? You got to be careful of always focusing on intensity and duration, because eventually fatigue is going to become your limiting factor.
What kind of programs are you running people through to increase that capacity?
Well, so what do you do in a 5-5-5 back squat?
What's my best 5?
No. But when you're doing a 5-by-5 back squat, what is it that you focus on? Right, you
recovery.
But you take 3 minutes,
Yeah,
because
2 to 3 minutes. Yeah.
And the reason is because you have to hit 5 repetitions, and the load you're lifting, if I knock it down to 1 minute, you won't be able to do that.
Absolutely.
You either have to cut your amount of reps. Right. So rest does matter, but in our sport, how do you know whether or not you're going to, in your next workout, going to get 3 minutes or 1 minute? Yeah, so what we need to do is we need to be training like we do in lifting, 1 rep, 3 rep, 5 rep, 10 rep, 20 rep. We need to be doing that with a variety of different movements. Wall ball. Men always do a 20-pound ball. Why? Why aren't you doing a 14-pound ball? Why don't you do a 20-pound ball, create fatigue, and then what I want you to do is, yes, you sprint. We do a 100-meter sprint. You know what we all do in CrossFit after a 100-meter sprint? Nothing. Runners, you know what they do? They do a 300-meter slow jog. And how do we build capacity? By doing a high intensity into a recovery.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to take your course twice, I'm always fascinated. I always leave with my jaw on the floor. I'm like, God, I love listening to you talk. And one of the things, like just flushing out
your fatigue.
Yeah, the lactic acid, and then redoing it, you know, and understanding what your recovery time is. When I wrestled in high school and college, that was one of the things. It's like, how quickly can you recover and go and do it again?
Right.
And it's one of those things. People overlook that.
I think we got supersets and drop sets coming back to CrossFit. It's like reminding me of my old bodybuilding days.
I mean, that's the thing, is that it's all stuff that's been around. So why not take these traditional concepts that have been proven in sports, that's like specific sports, and apply it towards gymnastic movements, apply it towards weightlifting movements?
Why do you think it always gets overlooked, though? Because a lot of what we're seeing now is a lot of the same stuff coming back.
Because it's not sexy. It's not sexy.
Yeah.
Everybody wants the sexy stuff.
Yeah, training. If you're really training, is boring.
Right.
It's monotonous.
But part of it is like, I think that our jobs as coaches is to obviously maximize adaptation in that most efficient way, but we want retention.
Yeah.
And if I'm throttling you every single day, I just don't want to do that. So maybe what we should be doing is a Metcon, but after the Metcon, when the body is flooded with lactate, I want you to take a movement that is your weakness, and I want you to clear that lactate out of the bloodstream in the movement where you are the weakest. And I'm going to do that Metcon for the sole purpose of improving your ability to recover with a PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say your movement that you're weak on is a deadlift. So you know what? After your Fran workout, and I don't want you to throttle Fran for PR. I want you to like do it at 95, 98%. Purpose is create blood lactate. And then you know what? I want you to accumulate 2 minutes with a PVC pipe, nice slow recovery deadlifts. And you know where those muscles are going to get the energy to contract from? From the lactate being pulled out of the bloodstream through the slow twitch recovery fibers.
Wow. Yeah, it's fascinating. Like,
right. So we already do the hard part, so why not work on the recovery end?
Well, but and at the same time, it's what you were saying before. People don't want to do those things. People don't want to do the unsexy stuff. You always want to grab a barbell and do some curls with it.
Or do Fran and like be all dramatic and laying on the floor, right? I mean, I do that.
How much is nutrition tying into what you're teaching, how you're working with these athletes?
Well, I mean, on the elite, so we have to always condition this. On the elite, they're anomalies, right? It was back in the day when I was doing triathlons. You know, I remember I was 8,000 calories, and I couldn't eat that much food. I would have 4 of it in liquid. And so part of it is that the elites, and this is what
8,000 calories.
Well, because you know we're working out.
You're burning through.
But I mean, that's where the skew is that the elites, we got to be careful on them setting the tone on nutrition, because they're an anomaly. They're working out 4 hours a day.
Good point.
And so you've got to be really careful of saying this is the direction we're going. For me, I train 4 hours a week, maybe 5. I can't copy the same nutrition plan that Matt Fraser does. I can't.
Yeah, I think for so long, I mean, especially I know when I got into CrossFit years ago, people would always be like, well, I'm going to do the Invictus workout, and I'm going to do this workout and that workout. But these workouts were built for full-time athletes and people who are being competitive. For the average person, especially where I'm from in New York, nobody has 2 hours to work out or 3 hours to work. I'm like, you guys got to dummy down what you think you should be doing.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, listen, I'm good for an hour a day at most. You know? And
me too.
15, 20 minutes of it is warming up and recovering and doing all that stuff.
Right.
I spend 15, 20 minutes to warm up. And
I mean, that's the thing is like, if you look at it, just take Matt. You know, his wife, fiance, Sammy, she takes care of everything. When she goes out of town, he's got Tupperware filled with food. Like, his job is to truly just train. I mean, it's let's face it, his life and doing that is rough, but she is putting him in a place where he can win.
Yeah.
We don't have that, right? We've got to take care of everything.
It'd be rougher if he wasn't winning. It's nice to have a couple $1 million in the bank and be able to work out for a living.
And that's what it is. I mean, I'm sure you've seen so many athletes who are so close. You know, the Dan Baileys, the Josh Bridges, Pancheks. These guys have always been right there. Whether it's Froning or Fraser at the top, these guys are like, what do you say to these guys? I mean, do they ever come to you and be like, hey, what am I missing?
No, all the time. But I mean, that's the thing is that Matt comes all the time and he is posing questions like, hey, you know, when I did that kick workout, I know we're working on my kick and we're trying to improve the aerobic capacity of my kick while swimming. But man, my hip flexors when I have fins on are lighting up.
Yeah.
He comes to me with that feedback, and that's what these athletes need to do is they need to come to the coach and provide information, and then the coach has now something to work on. Mm-hmm. If he comes to me and tells me that he's got hip flexor fatigue, muscular stamina in the hip flexor, that's a problem.
Were you looking at that as like a pelvic issue, like a psoas tightness, or like how would you go about assessing that?
No, so I'm looking at it as a muscular stamina fatigue, that he is failing in the kick and he has found his weakest link.
So he needs to work on hip flexor movements.
Right, so the very first thing that we should do with any athlete is look at the entire structure and where is the biggest opportunity for improvement. And obviously the number one place you start with is the largest muscle groups. Right. But these elite level athletes have solved all of the largest muscle groups, and so what you're looking at now is little hidden pieces that are becoming the weakest link.
Like little suboccipitals, or you're getting down to, minutia, fascia.
Well, and I learned that, like, so when I started in CrossFit, I got introduced by Annie Sakamoto, one of the original CrossFitters, and she was fascinated by my triathlon background. She says to me, you know, you've done a lot of volume in your day, but it's the same muscle groups over and over again, and maybe if you work on your neglected muscle groups, you can become functional. And I thought, wow, but I did swimming, biking, and running I think that's a whole body program. But it's naive to think that. And even in the sport of CrossFit, on the elite level, yes, you do a lot of work, but you are neglecting certain muscle groups, and that muscle group is going to become your weak link, and that's where your failure mode will be.
Now, do you get, since you have such success in the CrossFit space, right? There's so many people, I'm sure, reaching out to you, taking your seminar. Are there a lot of people from the triathlon, the endurance world, reaching out to you still and being like, hey, could you help us? Because you're doing a great job at CrossFit. Can you come back to this community and kind of help out, or are you still doing stuff with them?
Well, thank you for the nice words. But I would say right now, about 40% of the people that come to the CrossFit Aerobic Capacity course are outside of the sport. And so part of, I think, the excitement is the awareness that other sports are recognizing functional fitness training and being smarter about that, right? So a lot of sports are recognizing that we need to like if a marathon runner walks in the door, what's your value proposition to that marathon runner? And part of it is that CrossFit coaches can now offer that solution, right? They've optimized their legs, but through the protocols of CrossFit, can I improve their capacity with their upper body? And can their upper body now clear blood lactate faster in their body? If they can, then the legs can do more work.
Yeah.
And that's why they come in.
Well, it's so funny to me because there's so many, I've done the New York City Marathon several times, I've done a couple of Ironmans, triathlons, and it's so hard to convince a lot of these endurance athletes that functional fitness can help you become a better endurance athlete.
It's one of my biggest regrets. I look back on my triathlon, I never picked up a barbell.
Ever.
And I was 87% slow twitch fiber from biopsies, and the thing is like, I never did that. And so here I'm sitting there, and I look back, it's like, wait a minute. So I had a fast twitch ability. I had this 13% capacity that is partially idle. And here I am, I'm on the elite end. I'm so like trying to get fractional performance that I'm swinging a pendulum over my food, and if it turns clockwise, it's better for me. And I didn't go into the gym.
That 13% would have made a big difference.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it was the lowest hanging fruit. And that's the thing is, like, I look as a coach now, I don't want anybody that I touch to make that mistake where they look back and they have regret.
Yeah. No, and I see it all the time. I say you're missing, especially people who are actually competitive with it. I'm like, you're missing that special component, that strength component of it. And I have a question.
And the thing about it is strength-based training actually creates a better fuel economy, a better efficiency in the muscle group, because now you have more muscle fiber being recruited. And the thing is that I never, ever had that. And so when I would be looking, like, for example, a finishing kick, I had no finishing kick. I had to start at 10K out because I had no speed, strength, and power.
So for somebody who spends so long doing endurance sports, is it hard for you to come into a strength sport and gain strength?
Yeah, because it depends on your genetics, right? So I've been in CrossFit now 10 years, and my deadlift's 295. I would love to deadlift 300. I'm never going to be the strong guy in the gym. But you know what? If I go to the track, I'm pretty confident I could throttle, right? So part of it is recognizing that I'm not going to survive the zombie apocalypse. I'm not going to do it. The people that are going to survive the zombie apocalypse are CrossFitters because they represent this middle space. They're good in endurance and they're good in speed, strength, and power. They're the ones that are going to survive.
What do you think about some of the trends right now, like Wim Hof breathing or ketogenic diets?
So Wim Hof and this whole, there's a lot of breathing stuff that's out there, and I think that, like anything, there's various advancements in each one of those areas that ultimately become too complicated for the recreational person to even understand. And it's almost like these, high-tech watches now where it reads so much information that you become paralyzed and you don't even know what to use it for. Right. So part of it is that people need to understand the purpose of the breath and how can we maximize our performances based upon breathing. And what we know about breathing is that the brain needs to understand when that next breath is coming because that's the dose of energy. And if the brain doesn't see a rhythm in that breath, then how can the muscles ever settle? And I always do a trick with games athletes where I have them hold their breath for a minute, and then I put them in the pool and I say, okay, I want you to slide down the bottom of the pool and go across the length of the pool. holding your breath. And if you've never gone under the water the length of the pool, you normally pop up in the middle. And it's about 7 seconds in. And the reason is, one, adrenaline, fear, and the brain panics, and it's going to create this fatigue and send you up. So we recognize that the brain needs to understand when that next dose of energy is coming from. And so the basic thing that I want people to understand is creating a rhythm in the breath. Swimmers, without a doubt, have the best rhythm in the breath because what do? Breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. And so you teach that rhythm. I spent, when Sarah Sigmundsdottir came to Cookeville, for example, her breathing was very random. It was, it was random. Well, how's the brain going to know when the next breath is coming? If it doesn't know, how can the muscles settle? So what do? We work on creating a rhythm. And what I look at is running. What I want you to do is, normally most people when they impact the ground with a foot, they exhale. And then what I want you to do is I want you to count the number of steps that you're taking for every cycle of breath. So there's 2 camps in this. Normally, there's a group that takes 4 steps for every cycle of breath. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, And what they do is on an easy intensity, they don't breathe and fill their lungs very much because they don't have a high demand for oxygen. As the intensity increases, they take in more air, all right? Until they fill up a complete lung, and then what happens is that demand for oxygen starts to exceed what they can supply. So they go to a 3 count. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Breathing harder and harder and harder.
And that's hyperventilating. Yeah. That is a sign that your demand for oxygen is exceeding what you supply. That's the sign that you have gone beyond your lactate threshold. You are now in a non-sustainable environment. So what is your choices when you hit that? You must either slow down, get back in control of your breath, or finish. It's a way for an athlete in CrossFit to judge their level of intensity is the breath. For the longest time in this sport, I would listen to people that I didn't coach and tell my athletes they're in trouble because I would know from the breath. They're hyperventilating. And if you have another 10 minutes in your event and you're hyperventilating,
you need a little earpiece for your athletes. Like, don't worry about him. He's going to poop out here in a minute, I can tell. Yeah.
Well, so I made a comment on a podcast with Froning, and it was just a cream, like easy question, and he's like, well, so who do you think is the smartest in the sport? And I just Matt Fraser. And and the thing is that Matt Fraser has an ability of looking 5 lanes over, and he can look at an athlete, watch the chest move, and then count. Are they hyperventilating or are they in control? That's smart, right? But that's where they are. But that's the anomaly.
Speaking of Fraser, I heard you almost drowned him one time.
No, he did that.
You're blowing this guy's spot up.
I told you.
How do you hear this?
Prior to this interview.
Boy, no, he did that on his own.
The 2 things you try to bury the most, he just brought up on it.
What happened?
No, that was him. No, so I mean, that's the thing is that a lot of times, and Matt's really good, is that they come to you with a puzzle. And coaches, our job is to answer these questions and solve these puzzles. And in the games, they had 2 years ago that Run Swim Run as a 1.5 mile run into a 500 meter swim into 1.5 mile. And I told Matt, and we practiced it, I told him, I said, you know what, you're going to be able to hold between 5:20 and 5:30 pace for that opening 1.5. And what he realized is when you are vertical running and then you go horizontal in a swim, because of that horizontal in a swim, you recover significantly faster. So you could hit the water at almost like top rate of speed in the movement of running and then recover fast. So he does that. He makes it out to the first buoy in first place, and as he's going to the second buoy, Brent Fikowski, who is a great swimmer, catches him and passes him. So what does any elite level athlete do when someone catches you? You do when you get on the feet, right? But here's the kicker is, when that happens, and this is what was the puzzle, Matt goes to hang on, he tries to hang on for as long as he can, and then all of a sudden, he blows. Make a long story short, what happened and what I realized is that in every movement on land, you can slow your speed down and recover. But can you slow down enough in the water if you're not good enough swimmer and recover?
No.
And, right.
It's just so much more taxing.
Right, and so that was a revelation for me. And what happened is that happened to Matt. He popped, and he passes out because of the water, and Bob's in there. Fikowski sees them, and I mean, he limps in from the swim because of what happened. And so there was the puzzle for me, and part of it is that Matt and I sat down, and it's like, so we know what happened, but how did it happen, and how do we fix it? And that was the puzzle. We had to go back and understand, one, we need to be able to recover at a very slow rate of speed. How do we make that happen? So that he never gets into that situation again.
How much pushback do you get from them when you're like, all right, listen, we got to dial back your training a little bit?
So I never swear, ever. But Matt told me, and I told him, I said, we need to improve your aerobic capacity of your kick. And we would go to the pool and we would do 2,000 meter workouts, and it was all kicking, short fins, long fins, no fins. And he's all, that was a fucking waste of time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was all that bullshit kick stuff. That wasn't even swimming. And I'm like, dude, calm down. Like, just stick with the plan.
Yeah.
And
trust the process.
Like, hate the fence.
but part wax on, wax off. But part of it is that we, been working together since the end of 14, and he's gone along with some of these ideas, and they always work for him, and so he trusts the process, and so I'm able to do more advanced things because, let's face it, if you don't deliver results for anybody, they're going to bail. You have to deliver the results, and so he sticks with it. But you saw, look at how he did in the swim this year.
Oh my God!
I mean, if in a swimming event the guy gets 4th place, it's incredible.
He's one of the I think watching the girls is more fun than watching the guys. It's just so much more impressive. But he's one of the very few guys where you're like, this dude is moving. He's just crushing everything.
Yeah, like you watch him in Dubai, and it's like, wow, like. It's really remarkable.
That can catch him or even get close?
I think the biggest threat, honestly, is coming from someone that's not in the sport today. Because I think a lot of these legacy people, they're so far behind. So a lot of the stuff that Matt's been doing, he's been working on for a long amount of time. And if you look at building aerobic capacity in a multitude of movements, that takes years. And if you're not better than him now, how are you proposing to do the work he's doing and catch him? It's going to take an athlete like a Haley Adams, who started when she was 12, and she's not cutting corners. She's waiting till she hits full maturity, and then she'll start targeting weakness. Haley Adams, for example, is just doing generalized training. That's all she's doing, no specialized work.
But there has to be a point in time where just physically the body starts to slow down a little bit. I mean, growth hormone levels, testosterone.
Well, eventually. I mean, we see that with all athletes. But, if Matt's going to get beat this year, it's not going to come from, I don't think, anywhere.
You think someone like Jacob Hepner could get close? Or?
No, Jacob, so I know Jacob well. And no, I think that part of it is that these things that Matt has done, he's worked on for a long. Look at marathon runners, right? They spend 20 years working on fractional gains. Yeah. You're not going to all of a sudden get like a 10% improvement in handstand push-ups because of fatigue. You're not.
Unless you're cheating a little bit.
Well, right.
Yeah. I'm sure you've been asked this question 100 times, and you know better than anybody else. You've worked with Matt a lot. You've worked with Rich a lot. Rich, 5-6 years ago when he was winning, and Matt now. Are they comparable athletes? Is one better
today or back then?
Well, Rich back then and Matt now. Well, obviously, we'll never. Yeah, prime versus.
That's so the hard. So they, they hate that. So I and we have these generalized conversations, and
it's always it's like the same thing they did in Rocky Balboa. Yeah, or like Ali versus Tyson. Like I was watching highlights of Tyson, and I'm like, Ali was always so dominant, but not like Tyson was beating guys twice his size, knocking everybody out. Could he have? I don't think Ali could have hung with him.
But I mean, I think that the sport has evolved at the games into longer and longer durations. And Matt is really good in long duration events. I mean, one of the things that Matt has prided himself on is his ability to recover from event to event to event. let's face it, the CrossFit Games with the number of events, it's an endurance competition. And
No
if you
one-
stack
yeah.
on, right. And so what he has excelled at is these longer time domains and his ability to recover and perform. Rich Froning, if you look back on those older days, a lot of it was shorter time domain events, traditional, more CrossFit-based events. And so the Rich Froning back then, because of the way in which competitions were structured, was never challenged the way that Matt Fraser was. And so that's why you can't make a comparison. That's why it's tricky. It's really, truly apples and oranges, because he never had to train that way.
And there were less events back then.
There was less events. But the thing is that because he never was challenged in that way, you can't answer that question because it wasn't a part of the sport then.
I still vote for the GOAT. You know, like you gotta go with
Rich.
And then you gotta go with Ali too. I mean, like Tyson was a young punk.
I don't know. Watching him fight, it's just fascinating. I loved watching it. But so now, what do you think the shelf life? And we'll wrap this up pretty soon. What do you think the shelf life is of an average athlete these days? An average CrossFit?
On the elite end.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is that they're doing so much work, and they have to do in everything a range of intensities. And so in every movement they do, you're looking at an entire spectrum of intensity, everything from easy recovery speeds to maximal efforts. Anything that you're doing maximal effort in all body, muscle groups is going to create a level of fatigue that is going to wear the body down.
For sure.
And so part of it is that genetics come into play. There's certain athletes that are way more durable than others. And so the hard part is that, take Rich Froning. It's amazing, really, if you think about it. In 2010, second, first, second, first. He stayed relevant this entire time, but his body is banged up. It's really banged up. But that is, in my opinion, one of the most durable athletes that I've ever come across because of the volume and doing that for 10 years. So it's impressive that you can look at an athlete like Rich and go, you know what? At the highest level, I can be competing and training and still being functional.
For a decade.
And so that's kind of like, but he also has protocols that allows that to happen.
Last question. Top 20 male, female side, what percentage do you think are on some type of steroids?
So I was involved in the sport of triathlons when it went from just like a recreational, no prize money. As soon as prize money came into the sport, it evolved. And performances made a dramatic shift.
Start seeing people doing things they've never done before.
Because of money. And the thing about it is that there are certain populations of people that chasing that money at all costs, it's not worth it to them because they have an educational background, they have a lot to risk. And so there's other ones that are in different parts of the world that it's like, you know what, if I can make a name for myself, then I'm willing to go for it.
China, where all the growth of CrossFit is.
Well, but you look at that look at that in terms of Olympic sports. And so I think that that's part of the progression of the sport at the most elite end. And it happens in every sport when money gets introduced where you can create a living in here and you're saying, you know what, for a fractional gain in performance, I can go from making no money to getting an elite level sponsorship. And so I don't know on percentages, but everyone would be naive to think that with the inclusion of more and more prize money, more and more sponsorship dollars, that people aren't willing to take a risk.
Well, I was saying to my brother the other day, I was like, think about someone we've admired since we were kids. Everyone, from Arnold Schwarzenegger to Stallone. These guys weren't even competing. I mean, Arnold was, but like a lot of these guys were just looking good on camera. The Rock, all these guys. As soon as I've only idolized guys who were bit larger than life because of supplements.
I worshipped Lance Armstrong. I competed with him, and what he did, I was glued to the tour.
Yeah,
glued.
It's unbelievable.
But the bottom line is they're still putting in a lot of work, whether
absolutely
drugs or not.
For someone,
it's like you just shoot a needle in your ass, and all of a sudden you become super.
For some average Joe to think they could do what those guys did is still impossible.
No, but the thing that I worry about in terms of drugs is not from. I don't worry about it at all from like these individuals. That's not where I worry about. I worry more about like masters athletes as they come into it. And what the worry is let's say, for example, you know what, you come in and you say, I have no interest in competing. You know what I want? I want to look good and feel good. So it's like any procedure. I don't care what you do to your own body. And your intentions is that I'm never going to compete anyway. So you go on your HGH and you do all your treatments and everything because that's what you want to do. You want a healthy, you want to do that for aesthetic reasons. Now all of a sudden, because of that, you start looking in the gym and you're like, shoot, man, I'm kind of like legit.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at this CrossFit thing.
maybe I'll make a run at it.
Right, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry about is that you had no intentions, but because you were juiced, you're like, I'm going to rethink things.
Kenny, are you juiced?
I wish.
He does look good, though, boy.
I would try. But listen,
a little testosterone cream on
we ate up a lot of your time. Chris, thank you so much.
Nice,
it's
man.
always fascinating.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I mean, aerobic capacity, right?
So we have about 30 seminars that are releasing around the world, CrossFit Aerobic Capacity. So those you can find on aerobiccapacity.com or crossfit.com.
They're fascinating. I love listening. It was so awesome. I took it at Power Monkey, and then we did it again. Actually, both were at Power Monkey that I've done with you.
So one of the things about the course that I do is I share every piece of knowledge that I have, and I deliver it through the course. And people always ask me, they're like, wow, you don't hold anything, like all of the things that you're working on and where you're driving content, like people can just take that. And I'm like, yeah, that is true, and that's what I want them to do.
Yeah.
But if you give all of your content and that's your like intellectual property, you are now motivated to go out and find the next thing.
Right.
And if you always retain, like imagine if I held on to pacing and I never explained, how do you pace a workout that you've never seen before? I'm explaining pacing 20 years from now. I want to show you how to do it. I want you to explain to your members how to pace in a workout that they've never seen before. And you know why I do that? Is because I'm going to work on the next thing.
But to understand that the level that you do is just, I want to take the course like 3 more times. And I'm not even saying that because you're sitting here. I really and truly believe it's what drives an athlete to become better. You know, the lactic acid stuff. I could listen to that for days.
Thank you. I mean, I think the key is in explanations. Don't throw a bunch of science out there. The human body, it's logical, and every single person, if you explain what you're trying to do, anybody should logically understand it because that's how the body works. You put a stimulus on the body, there's an adaptation.
Well, I think what you don't get enough credit for is that you always make it fun. Like the hour will go by so quick because you're like going through it and you're racing through these push-ups and stuff, and I'm like, God damn, it hurts.
Yeah, you did those.
Yeah, I was like, this hurts so bad. But by the time I was like, wait, that's it? That's all we're gonna do? I was like, I need more. I wanted more.
I love tricking people. Like the workout I wrote here tomorrow morning, the ski school. People have no idea what's coming. Like there's always a hidden trick, and they're doing a ski or going to do a swim and do a double under with a heavy rope. They have no idea.
It's brutal.
It
sounds horrible on paper.
I can't wait to see the theatrics because when they miss a double under, they get a penalty tomorrow.
Oh,
and the penalty is 5 more calories on the skier.
With the thick rope?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds brutal.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you so much.
Man.
One more question I have for you, though. You brought up the zombie apocalypse. I always say, all right, zombie apocalypse is coming. I love The Walking Dead. I love anything.
I love me too.
What's your weapon?
I love that crossbow, man.
Yeah?
Don't you? Like somehow it never misses the head.
Or he never runs out of arrows.
No,
it's
never.
been 4 years. It's been 4 years. He never runs out of arrows.
And he's able to shoot just a rod straight. No pin feathers. Like that's like a secret.
Impressive.
Like that's my weapon.
Yeah,
I mean,
awesome. Guys, Chris Hinshaw, the best in the game. If you guys don't know who he is, check him out, Aerobic Capacity. It is one of the best seminars I've ever been to. So check him out.
Brother.
Thank you so much.
Man.
It's been amazing.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks.